I'm Kay Daigle of Beyond Ordinary Women, and I'd like to welcome you to our video series, Soul Care. And I'm joined by Dr. Gail Seidel. Gail is a graduate of Dallas Seminary, and she has a Doctor of Ministry degree in Spiritual Formation from Gordon Conwell Seminary. And you can read more about Gail in her bio on our website. Gail, thank you so much for joining us. I've been excited about this series. As we talked about in the first video, just what is soul care and why do we need it? I knew that was an important topic for all of us, spiritual leaders particularly, but really all of us are spiritual leaders to someone. We all are giving out to other people spiritually, and we all need soul care. As I think back on part of the reason this is so important to me, a number of years ago when I was working in a church, I really knew something was wrong. I wasn't doing well. I just wasn't doing well, and I couldn't figure out what the problem was. I was having quiet times. I had boundaries. I wasn't working all the time. I knew to take off, and yet I wasn't okay. And I thought, well, it can't be burnout, because if I burned out, that means I wouldn't be having quiet times. I wouldn't be like this. So it caused me to do some examination and try to figure it out. And this video is about how is your soul. And that was sort of where I was at that time. Something's wrong with my soul, and I don't know what's wrong. So how do you get to the root of a problem like that? How do you lead people to really examine their souls and understand what's going on?
Well, I think it's interesting in the history of the Wesleyan college movement in England, they had these small groups, and the way they greeted each other was, how is it with your soul? And sometimes it's just asking the question. Our students that we have in the doctoral program, every cohort, every year of the 3 years, they have to write a paper at the beginning that they turn into us before we have the class on the current state of their soul. So part of it is becoming aware of how you even define what's inside of you, and paying attention, taking time enough and being quiet enough to what is really going on. It's like, when the red light on the dashboard of our car comes on, we pay attention to it. And often things like you're describing that happen to you are when we are feeling depressed or under it, or maybe we've lost a loved one. There are circumstances that put us into a situation where something is wrong and we can't really identify what it is. So learning to pay attention to what we're feeling, like the red light on the dashboard, and then exploring that with the Lord is something that really helps.
And I don't think we're commonly taught that in the church, are we?
I wasn't taught that, but I'm not faulting the church. I just think we are so bent on being busy for the Lord and serving Him, thinking that's what we should be doing, in a sense we should be, that we don't pay attention to what we're feeling. One of the things that I think is so fascinating is that American people, someone said we get 16,000 images a day, and we're talking like you're driving on the freeway and the images, all these cars passing, or you click into your computer to do some work, and there are all these things on the right-hand column flicking. There's sounds, there's dogs barking, music in the background. You go into a store to change clothes in a dressing room, and there's this music piped in. So we receive a lot of images every single day. And we have to figure out where those images are going and how they're impacting us. And that's why learning to pay attention, and what you use the word examining maybe even every night before you fall asleep, what happened today? Where did I experience joy? Where did I experience sorrow? What is God trying to say to me through these things? When did I feel disrupted? Sometimes you feel disrupted and you don't even know why. So you just ignore it and you go on, but it's going to surface later. So part of it is learning to pay attention. There are some categories. I know Mindy Caliguire, in her book, Discovering Soul Care, she has a list of things, how you know if your soul has been neglected. And some of the examples or categories of soul neglect are self-absorption, you were talking about narcissism, shame, apathy, toxic anger, physical fatigue, isolation, a stronger temptation to sin, drivenness, feelings of depression, panic, insecurity, callousness, a judgmental attitude, cynicism, a lack of desire for God. All of those things might be a red light, to think, okay, something's going on. By contrast, soul health, when you've spent time alone with the Lord and He's nurtured and rebuilt you, are things like love, joy, having compassion, giving and receiving grace, generosity of spirit, peace, ability to trust, discernment, humility, creativity, vision, all of these things. So you see the contrast of when your soul is healthy, I feel more alive and I feel more able to give grace to someone who's maybe offended me on the freeway and cut in front of me. All of these various things of living.
All right, so if we find that we are not living a life that suggests our soul is healthy, like I wasn't.
Right.
How do we determine the cause of all that? We see these things that we're doing that we don't really want to do. We're short with people, we're upset, we're stressed. How do we get down deeper to determine what to do?
Like when your paradigm has stopped working and what used to help nourish yourself wasn't working anymore.
Right.
I guess I would say if someone were asking me that in a spiritual direction capacity, it's stopping and creating a space for you to spend time with the Lord and say, okay, what's going on? Help me understand, what am I feeling? And maybe that's where you go back to thinking about, okay, where did it start? When did my soul start feeling disrupted? Was it because someone said something to me, or my husband lost his job, or my high school daughter got pregnant, or, whatever? It's tracing it back, and it's learning to pay attention and learning to listen to God informing you over. And that's not an easy formula. I mean, there's no real formula to this. It's just realizing something's wrong. It's like when the red light comes on. You either get the manual out or you drive to the closest gas station and ask for help. So it's finding the resources, the scriptures, the people of Christ, the church, your pastor, a spiritual director, or you're just yourself with the Lord.
And so is there, if you're doing that, if you're looking back at the cause, it seems like you don't want to go a long time in this state before you begin to do that.
Right.
So what are some ways we can continually examine how the state of our soul?
Right. Well, one thing is just a simple practice of before you fall asleep, is just reviewing your day and thinking, okay, what brought me joy? When did I feel close to the Lord? When did I feel far away from Him? What conversations enlivened me? What conversations were discouraging? Sometimes people, as we get older, have a lot of health issues. So it's thinking about, well, is it my back? Or is it my toes? Or is it my liver? I mean, it's just kind of doing a self-examination, but not with the idea of, well, I've got to reform myself, but more in the presence of Christ. Lord, what is going on? What are your invitations for me in this?
And that's harder for some people than for others, isn't it?
Right. I think you're right on, Kay, because some of us aren't introspective or reflective. We don't even think about ourselves except maybe what clothes we're going to wear or how our hair is done or whatever. But it is wise to pay attention to the interior life, what we're thinking, what we're feeling, what we're choosing. And that in itself is a place to begin.
Well, that's great. And that really leads us to our final video that we're going to shoot as we think about nourishing our soul and making sure that our soul is healthy. So that will be our last video. Again, we have some questions. They're all on one download, so if you download it once, you have questions for all the videos, but just some questions that Gail has for you to consider as you think about how your soul is, so you can process what we've just discussed. So thank you, Gail,
Thank you,
again
Kay.
for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.